Shocking moment, Janitor outscores elite SEALs. You won't believe what happened next. In the heart of the bustling city of Avalon, a peculiar event was unfolding. It started as a regular day at the local gym, filled with the relentless clanging of weights and the rhythmic thump of sneakers on the hardwood floor. But out of nowhere, a hush swept over the crowd, a thick blanket of disbelief as the unthinkable happened. A janitor, of all people, stood face to face with seasoned Navy SEALs, each one as tough as a brick wall. Whispers spiraled through the air. "No way," someone breathed, and that simple phrase was just the beginning of a tale that no one would ever forget. Frank, the janitor, was a middle-aged man with a sturdy build, unkempt hair, and a sly smile. Most people ignored him, too busy focusing on their workouts. But today, they couldn't look away. He cracked his knuckles, his hands rough and calloused from years of labor, and with a flick of his wrist, sent a basketball soaring. It was a clean shot, hitting the net like a whisper in a crowded room. But what really staggered the onlookers was how that single shot seemed to unleash a torrent of chaos. The elite SEALs were doing their best to remain composed, but their expressions shifted from confident grins to widened eyes and slack jaws. As the crowd erupted into gasps and murmurs, the tension twisted like a tightened spring. "Unbelievable," someone gasped, while another shouted, "Is he for real?" A sense of urgency pumped through the air, electrifying every soul present. How could a janitor outperform this skilled team? What secrets lay hidden behind his unassuming exterior? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The tension in the gym spiked even further as Frank prepared for another shot, his resolve hardening like concrete. Each heartbeat echoed in the silence. The SEALs exchanged frantic glances, sweat glistening on their brows. How could a career janitor stand toe-to-toe with the best of the best? Just as Frank took aim again, the gym door flew open, and an ominous figure slipped inside, making the atmosphere unbearably taut. The crowd shifted uneasily, a collective gasp barely escaping their lips, as Frank's focus wavered for just a moment. What did this stranger want? Was he friend or foe? All eyes were on him, a mysterious shadow lurking at the edge of something monumental. The game was far from over, and the moment hung in the air, thick with anticipation. What was about to unfold? Would the janitor seize his moment, or would the shadows of the unknown snatch it away? The figure at the door moved like smoke through the room, obscured yet undeniably commanding. Tall and clad in a dark coat, the stranger's presence sent ripples of unease through the crowd that just seconds ago hung on Frank's every move. Frank's focus shattered like glass as his eyes flickered towards the intruder. The basketball still gripped firmly in his hand, he hesitated. The energy shifted. Whispers morphed into murmurs of confusion. "Who is that?" someone choked out, eyes darting between the janitor and the unknown. The newcomer stepped deeper into the gym, his eyes hidden beneath the brim of a hat, but the weight of his stare felt like an anvil. Frank's instincts screamed at him to act, to either step forward or retreat. Instead, he felt frozen, trapped in a moment that felt both tangible and dreamlike. The SEALs, who had stood tall and poised just moments before, now shifted uneasily, their tight-knit camaraderie fraying at the edges as uncertainty rippled through their ranks. They had faced countless adversaries, but this was different. With each slow step the stranger took, the air became heavier, charged with unspoken challenges. He finally broke the silence, his voice low, slicing through the tension like a knife. "I came for you, Frank." Gasps erupted again, but this time it was more profound, tinged with fear and intrigue. What did he mean? What could a janitor possibly have to do with this mysterious visitor? "Me?" Frank managed to stammer, the world around him narrowing in on this single shard of clarity. The gym, the seals, the audience all became a blur. Every eye was fixed on him now, the weight of expectation pressing down like the weight of a championship game on the final quarter. Yes, you. The ball and what you just did, it's just the beginning. The stranger smirked, a knowing glint flashing in his eyes, as if he understood secrets that were meant for Frank alone. Frank's throat tightened. What are you talking about? The words pushed out of him, a mix of curiosity and dread. What was his life but dull monotony? But standing here, confronted by this uncanny man, he felt an electric surge of something else, a flicker of purpose that ignited the ashes of his mundane existence. The stranger stepped closer, now just a breath away. You have a gift, Frank. A powerful one. And people like you, they don't just disappear into the background. Before he could respond, a sudden crash reverberated through the gym. A loud clatter as weights tumbled off a rack, and the crowd jolted. All eyes snapped away from the confrontation, startled shouts erupting. Seizing the shifting focus, the stranger leaned in and whispered urgently, "Seek the truth before it seeks you." With that, he stepped back, disappearing through the chaos like a shadow into the night. The gym erupted into panic. People scattered, the tension that settled moments before now morphing into sheer chaos. Frank stood rooted, clutching the basketball like it was a lifeline, heart racing. What had just transpired? His head swirled with questions, each more urgent than the last. Before he could process, an urgent voice rang out from the crowd, breaking through the din. Is he really just a janitor? The weight of those words echoed as Frank realized this was only the start. Secrets lay buried beneath the surface of his life, and for the first time, he felt the pull of destiny, tugging at the hem of his reality. As the crowd surged, confusion reignited the whispers. What awaited him beyond the gym doors? Frank knew he had to find out. Just as he took a step forward, a rush of adrenaline fueling him, another crash tantalized the air, more chaotic than before. The scene beckoned him from the shadows, a promise of truths waiting to be unveiled. Was he ready to step into the unknown? Suddenly, a voice from behind shouted, "Look out!" And the gym lights flickered, casting eerie shadows. Frank turned, heart in throat, what now lay lurking in the depths of the chaos. He felt the thrill of uncertainty gripping him. The game was just beginning. The gym roared in confusion, bodies flinging themselves to safety as panic spread like wildfire. Frank's instincts kicked into overdrive. He pivoted, scanning the chaos. The light sputtered again, plunging the gym into flickering darkness before brightening back to life, revealing half-formed shadows clawing at walls. "Get down!" Someone yelled, but Frank's feet were glued to the floor, rooted deeply in the storm of emotions swirling around him. The stranger's warning echoed in his mind, "Seek the truth before it seeks you." What truth? What had he done? The weight of the basketball felt heavy in his hand. It was just a game, right? But now it felt like a catalyst, an ignition point between his ordinary life and this unfolding nightmare. Someone screamed, shattering his trance. Frank spun again as a figure lunged past him. It was one of the SEALs, eyes wide with fear. "We need to secure the exits," he shouted, his voice harsh against the din. The urgency tugged Frank into focus, cutting through the haze that cloaked him, but just as quickly, the room trembled under the force of another tremor. Was it someone slamming into the bleachers? Frank felt a sudden surge, a cry built in his throat, raw and uncontained. He struggled to control it, but it burst forth. "What is happening?" His voice echoed through the gym, drawing attention once again. The SEALs rallied together, their imposing figures commanding the space, yet even they seemed uncertain now. The stranger's presence loomed like a ghost, and he had vanished as mysteriously as he appeared. The lights flickered again, and Frank's heart raced. What if the stranger was right? What if he wasn't just an ordinary janitor? Could he really have a gift? "Focus!" barked another SEAL. "We can't panic. Check the secure areas." They scattered like seasoned wolves, yet Frank remained. Each passing second pulled him deeper into a web of questions. Was something out there, something that sought him? He glanced at the door through which the stranger had slipped away, a maelstrom of uncertainty surrounding him. Suddenly, a group of silhouettes emerged from the dim corner of the gym, figures in hooded jackets, their intentions hidden behind shadows. Frank's heart stuttered in his chest. He could sense the threat, their eyes trained on him with a predatory gleam. Amidst the confusion, the crowd had thinned, leaving him exposed. The basketball felt light in his grasp now, more a weapon than a sport. "Over here!" one of the hooded figures called out, pointing straight at Frank as their voices cut through the chaos like a knife. Fear twisted in his gut, and he felt time slow. The SEALs hadn't noticed the new threat approach. "Frank!" shouted a familiar voice. It was Teresa, her face pale as she pushed through the remaining crowd. "We have to go." But he couldn't move, could barely breathe as the shadows crept closer, the intent clear in their eyes. In that moment of desperation, understanding washed over him. This was more than a game, more than just a chance encounter. They were after him, this stranger and those lurking in the dark. Frank clenched the basketball tighter, determination igniting like a match in the dark. "What do you want?" he finally managed to shout, every shred of fear coiling into something resolute. One of the figures stepped forward, pulling back their hood to reveal a familiar face. "Jared." Their eyes locked, and Frank's stomach twisted. Why would Jared betray him? "Frank," Jared sneered. "You should have listened. It's too late now." As the tension peaked and the crowd's chaos dissolved into palpable dread, Frank felt a cold realization wash over him. They were coming for him, and time was running out. With that sudden clarity, a loud explosion erupted outside the gym, a shattering boom that shook the foundation, drowning out the chaos and raising a new wave of fear. Frank's heart pounded in his ears, and he knew he had to make a choice. Would he confront what was coming, or would he run? He took a deep breath, ready to decide his fate as a blinding urgency surged through him, because whatever was coming, it was now closer than ever. What lay just beyond those doors? With every ounce of courage, he prepared to step into the unknown. The air was electric, vibrating with tension. Outside, the chaos continued, sirens wailing in the distance, flames licking the night sky. Inside the gym, the blast had scattered the remaining crowd, and their gasps filled the space like a dirge. "Frank!" Teresa shouted again, her voice piercing through the noise. She darted toward him, desperation etching lines on her face. "Come on. We have to move." But he couldn't budge. Jared's betrayal hung in the air like a storm cloud, thick and suffocating. "Why?" Frank's voice cracked, desperation spilling out. "Why are you doing this, Jared?" Jared stepped closer, a grin splitting his face, but it wasn't the kind he remembered. "You had a chance to be one of us, Frank. You didn't want to see the truth. Now look where we are." He gestured around, the shadows looming larger behind him, nodding in agreement. Frank felt the weight of the basketball like the pressure of the world. Was it too late to uncover whatever truth had dragged him into this nightmare? He glanced at Teresa, fear blazing in her eyes. He couldn't let her down. "Not now. Get down." One of the SEALs shouted as he lunged toward the hooded figures, weapon drawn. But the shadows moved with unnatural speed, darting like phantoms. The SEAL's shout was drowned by another explosion. This time, it reverberated inside his chest. "Move, Frank." Teresa grabbed his arm, but he shook her off. "No. I can't leave them. We can't save everyone." She was shouting now, her urgency matching the panic overtaking the gym. "We need to go, now." But Frank turned back, eyes wide. "They're after me." "Why me?" The answer had to be out there somewhere in the fire and smoke, beyond the panic and chaos. The shadows sprang forward, lunging at the SEALs with horrifying agility. Frank felt the basketball slip from his fingers as he shouted, "Look out!" His heart raced as he watched a figure in black tackle one of the seals, grappling for control. In that split second, Frank's thoughts crystallized. He needed clarity amid the storm. He needed to fight back. With a surge of adrenaline, he dove forward, dodging the chaos, grabbing the basketball again. This could be his weapon, his lifeline. He could turn the tide. "Get out!" he yelled again, this time with a fierceness that shook the air. He hurled the ball at the nearest hooded figure. It struck with a loud thunk, the player's surprise echoing around the gym. The seals were regaining footing, pushing back against the encroaching shadows. But Jared just laughed. "You think it's that simple? You're in way over your head." Each moment felt like eternity. The crowd was reduced to a fading murmur in the background, the focus now solely on Frank and the shadows closing in. Suddenly, a figure lunged at Jared, spinning him away. It was one of the seals. "Let us go!" he shouted, but Frank knew better than to retreat. "Hold that thought!" he called back, grappling with both fear and determination. He darted toward Jared, the basketball gripped tightly in his hand. "Why don't you show me how strong your little group is?" Frank spat, the defiance seeping through his veins. He threw the basketball again. This time, the seals took advantage of his distraction, firing shots into the mass of shadows, but just as Frank was about to dive for safety, a sudden shift in the air cut through the chaos. A figure emerged from the smoke, a glowing silhouette that seemed to pulse with energy. Frank's heart raced with a mix of hope and dread. Who was this? And what did they have to do with everything spiraling around him? As the figure stepped closer, the shadows hesitated, confusion brewing in their movements. A sudden clarity washed over Frank, illuminating the knot of uncertainty in his gut. "Reveal yourself!" he roared, stepping forward, ready to embrace whatever cosmic confrontation awaited him. In that moment, time stretched, drawing tight like a bowstring, and Frank understood truth was more complex than he could have ever imagined. Would he walk into it or step back, letting the fear swallow him whole? With every beat of his heart, the atmosphere pulsed, the gym quaking around him. What would happen next? Would he leap into the unknown or stay ensnared by the shadows? Whatever came next would mark the path of his life, and he was ready to choose. The figure stood before him, slowly revealing what lay beneath the mask. "You've only just begun to discover the truth," it spoke, voice hauntingly familiar, but could he trust it? As the tension snapped tight, leaving Frank teetering on the brink of revelation and dread, a new sound emerged, a rising chant from the shadows. "Join us, Frank. Join us!" And with that chilling invitation, Frank felt the darkness close tightly around him, pulling him, and fate awaited him in the depths below. What lay hidden in that darkness? What truths would be uncovered? The air shifted again, thick with anticipation. The chant grew louder, echoing off the gym's walls, a hypnotic rhythm that made Frank's skin crawl. "Join us, Frank. Join us!" It was a siren call, seductive and dangerous, weaving a spell he couldn't quite shake off. He glanced at Jared, whose smile faded into something fiercer, a predatory gleam flashing in his eyes. "Don't listen to them." Teresa's voice broke through the murmur. She pulled at Frank's arm, but the gravitational pull of the glowing figure was nearly overwhelming. "I just don't get it," Frank shouted back, voice hoarse with fear and fury. "What do you want from me?" "Everything is in your hands, Frank," the glowing figure answered, its voice both soothing and unsettling. "You were always meant to lead." The figure raised a hand, and as if compelled, the shadows froze. He knew what that meant, a power he hadn't realized he possessed, the ability to command. Panting heavily, Frank felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. Could he rise above the chaos? "Stay out of this!" Jared shouted, lunging toward the figure, but the shadows darted backward, almost protective, well aware of their priorities. An electric thrill ran through Frank. Was he actually gaining control? "There is a war, Frank. All that is happening, the chaos, the betrayals, they lead to this moment. You either join us or fight a losing battle, the figure continued, voice steady. This isn't war, it's madness. Frank fired back, heart racing. He looked at Teresa, her determination unwavering. They had to get out of here, but the shadows around them flickered with life, feeding off his turmoil. Frank! A seal yelled, grappling with another shadow, barely managing to keep their footing. We can't hold them much longer. We need to regroup. A piercing scream sliced through the noise, drawing everyone's attention. One of the seals crumbled to the floor, shadows twisting around him, pulling him into their ranks. Frank's stomach knotted. If he lost anyone else, it's too late for them. They've made their choice. Jared shouted, driving a knife of betrayal deeper into Frank's heart. One wrong move, and everything would fall apart. Breathing heavily, adrenaline surging through his veins, Frank gathered every ounce of courage he had. I refuse. I won't join your darkness. He stepped forward, defiance hardening his resolve as he raised the basketball. After everything that had happened, this was his only chance. With a shout that drowned out the chant, he hurled the basketball straight at the figure. The moment it left his hands, time seemed to slow, the air thick with impending consequence. As the ball spiraled through the air, it met an unseen barrier. It glowed against the surface before exploding in a brilliant flash of light. The gym lit up like day, and the shadows shrieked, retreating into the corners, disoriented and vulnerable. Now! Frank shouted, a roar of empowerment igniting his voice. He turned toward Teresa, and without hesitation, they bolted toward the nearest exit. But Jared's voice cut through the confusion, venomous and threatening. You think you've won? You've only just begun to understand the power you have. You'll regret this. Outside, the heat from the flames hit them like a wave. The chaos still raged, but at least they were free of the shadows, for now. Frank and Teresa sprinted, pushing through the throng of each terrified face that had once cheered for the game, now twisted in horror. The weight of Frank's choice loomed in the back of his mind. When they finally reached safety behind a rusted van, Teresa turned to him, eyes wide with fear and urgency. What was that? What is happening? I don't know, Frank panted, gripping her shoulders, but I felt it. I could command them. I have to learn more. We can't let this, whatever this is, win. But as he said those words, a shadow flickered in the alley beside them, and a whisper slid through the air, trailing the scent of smoke. You can't run from your destiny, Frank. It has already begun. Tremors of fear raced down his spine. What destiny? And what lay ahead? For him and Teresa, as they faced what was chasing them through the chaos, the echo of those haunting words trailed behind them, a chilling reminder that the battle was far from over. What truth would he unveil next, and at what cost? Frank's heart raced, each beat a drum against the ominous silence that followed the echoes of the whispered shadows. The fiery chaos behind them pulsed like a heart, but the dark alley felt like a tomb. The flickering light from the flames danced against the brick walls, casting ominous shapes that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. Did you hear that? Teresa's voice trembled. She moved closer, her breath hitching as she scanned the alley's depths. Yeah, Frank replied, his voice low. It's like they're watching us. He felt their scrutiny, those lurking figures in the shadows, their intentions cloaked in darkness. The weight of knowing he possessed some kind of power turned in his gut, heavy and oppressive. Frank, we need to get somewhere safe. We can't stay here. Teresa pulled at him, urgency crackling in her tone. No. The stubbornness surprised even himself. I need to figure out what this means. Why me? The alley was too quiet, but that quiet was deceptive, a thin veil over an abyss. The shadows might retreat, but Frank had an unsettling feeling they were only biding their time. Suddenly, the ground trembled, vibrating beneath them. What now? Frank shouted, the alarm rising in his throat. Before Teresa could respond, a deep rumble erupted from the sidewalk, splitting the earth like a raw wound. The scene twisted and cracked as shadows coalesced, forming a towering mass that surged toward them. Their whispers pulsed, growing louder, blending into an ominous chorus. "Join us. You were meant to lead. Run." Frank grabbed Teresa's hand, pulling her away, but she hesitated, looking back. "Frank, we can't just abandon your friends. They need you. They're lost." He growled, desperation creeping into his voice. "This isn't about them anymore. I can't drag anyone into this mess. Not now." Just as the shadows lunged, Frank felt an intoxicating surge of energy course through him, a resonance that awakened something deep within. "No!" he shouted, determination swallowing his fear as he turned to face the darkness. "I will not join you." The shadows paused, tendrils wavering as if struck. It was the first glimpse of doubt he had seen within them. Encouraged, Frank raised his arms, focusing all his will to push back against the darkness. "Get out!" A wave of light shot from his hands, shimmering like radiating fire. It sliced through the shadows, and for a moment, he saw panic in their depths. It was alive, dragging back, losing the strength they once held over him. "I can do this!" Frank yelled, directing it outward. Color exploded across the alley, battling against the encroaching dark. "Frank! Be careful!" Teresa urged, eyes wide, but he was too focused, entranced by the power flowing through him. The shadows snapped back, recoiling in a fit of rage, morphing into grotesque shapes as they screeched. The sound was a harrowing blend of fury and fear, echoing off the walls, wrapping around them like a living entity. "Stop! You're only making it worse!" Teresa shouted, but annoyance bristled in the back of Frank's mind. He needed to take control. In a blinding moment, Frank shut his eyes and envisioned what he wanted. "I command you." The words tore from him, raw and unfiltered. When he opened his eyes, an ethereal force radiated from him, pulsating through the air. But with that command, he felt something shift. An unsettling bond was born, threatening to twist his will into the very darkness he defied. A horrid silence blanketed the alley. It was electric, suspended in time, leaving only the sound of their breaths heavy in the air. Frank watched the shadows quiver, uncertain, as if the power had reached out to them, seeking to ensnare rather than repel. "Frank, you need to stop." Teresa's voice broke through, a lifeline thrown into the chaos. She stepped closer, her eyes fierce with concern, fear etched into every line of her face. Just then, a low whisper sliced through the stillness. "You can't resist your destiny, Frank. You'll belong to us." Frank's heart dropped. He had opened a door he wasn't ready to face. "What is happening?" he stammered, the weight of the looming darkness suffocating. The shadows began to merge, a swirling mass of despair and temptation. Desperation coursed through Frank. "I want to be yours." But he was unsure. He could almost feel the fingers of darkness curling around him, familiar yet foreign, promising power. "Help me!" a voice rang out from the depths of the shadows, a voice he recognized. The echoing plea sent chills down his spine. It was Jared. Before he could process, a figure emerged in the shrouded dark. Jared, eyes blazing. "You're the key, Frank. You're the only one who can unlock this." In that moment, Frank understood. Allies and enemies, power and submission. Everything hinged on his next choice. Could he resist? Or would he be dragged down that path of darkness whether he wanted to or not? The shadows beckoned with a haunting allure, and the air thickened with dread. Frank was faced with the ultimate choice, a choice that could alter the fates of everyone he cared for. But little did he know, the darkness held secrets of its own, ones that could change everything. What awaited him as he ventured deeper into the abyss? Frank's mind raced, spinning like a whirlwind, and he barely registered the brittle silence enveloping the alley. Jared's wild eyes locked onto his, desperation etched into his every feature. "Frank, you have to trust me." Jared's voice was urgent but laced with fear. We're running out of time. The shadows writhed closer, hunger palpable in their movement, and Frank felt them clawing at the edges of his strength. Trust you? He echoed, the words bitter on his tongue. You got us into this mess. Look at what's happening. Jared took a hesitant step forward. I didn't know. No one knew what would happen when we stumbled upon that thing. The artifact, it's more powerful than we could imagined. But you can harness it. You can control it. Teresa's grip on Frank tightened. What artifact? You're not making any sense. But Frank's focus remained on Jared. What do you mean? What did you find? It's down there. Jared pointed towards the flickering shadows coiling around them, the very essence of darkness morphing ominously. It's the source of their power, and it's calling to you. You're the one who can wield it. A heavy dread settled in Frank's gut. I don't want to be their puppet, he murmured, watching the shadows begin to pulse, almost in sync with his heartbeat. Then don't be. Jared shouted, stepping forward, his voice breaking. Fight them. You're stronger than this. Just believe in yourself. That was it, wasn't it? Self-belief had been hard-won, buried under layers of doubt. But now it was the only weapon he had left. The shadows surged forward, tendrils stretching out, and Frank felt the pressure against his chest growing. I command you. He yelled again, trying to summon the light from within him. Searing energy surged in his veins, igniting his spirit against the tide of darkness, but it was a fragile flame flickering in the wind. Jared. What if it pulls me in? What if I can't fight it? Frank's voice seemed to break the spell, and for a moment, the shadows hesitated, their whispers stuttering into silence. Then fight harder. Jared urged, fists clenching. Just like you just did. You pushed them back, do it again. As if responding to Jared's rallying cry, the shadows clawed more fiercely, tasting his fear. The avenue echoed with an otherworldly wail, erratic and haunting. The shadows had tasted the spark of resistance and hungered for more. This is crazy. Teresa shouted, looking between Frank and Jared as the pressure mounted. Frank, you can't do this alone. Don't lose yourself in their whispers. Frank's heart thudded violently against his ribcage. What was it going to cost him to fight? Was it worth it? The flickering lights breathed life through shadows, and he felt both exhilaration and horror coursing through him. Now! Shouted Jared, a frantic gleam in his eyes. Together. Taking a shaking breath, Frank nodded at Teresa. We do this together. No matter what. They surged forward, hands joined, amplifying the pulse of light in Frank's chest. The shadows reacted violently, thrashing against the barrier they generated. Here. Now. They screamed in unison, their voices shrill, layers of agony woven through their threat. Frank pressed into the light pooling in his palms, pouring each ounce of focused energy into the expanding glow. Rainbow shards erupted from him, splinters of brightness slicing through the murk as he found strength in unity. But as the wave of color dispersed the darkness, an unexpected turmoil whirled beneath the surface, echoing promises of power and pain. Suddenly, the air pulsed thicker with tension. Out from the shadows a figure, cloaked in darkness, loomed larger than the rest, its presence suffocating. Foolish boy, you cannot escape your fate. You are mine. Frank's breath hitched. Who are you? He demanded, defiance lacing his voice. The figure stepped into the fading light, smirking as its features sharpened into focus. You will learn soon enough, Frank. The truth about yourself, and the others. As those words struck him like a knife, the ground beneath began to quake, a rumble heralding the fracture. Between light and dark. Whatever fate awaited them, they were only at the beginning of a battle that would unleash truths larger than them all. Could they survive this clash of destinies? What lies ahead would shake their very foundations. What if the shadows knew secrets better left forgotten? Frank's heart raced as the shadowy figure advanced, its features now unmistakable, a gaunt face with hollow eyes and a smile that sent icy tendrils of fear crawling up Frank's spine. "I can show you true power," it taunted, every word cloaked in malice. He stepped back, dragging Jared and Teresa with him. "Get away from me!" Frank shouted, trying to break the grip of the dark energy creeping around them. But the figure only paused, savoring Frank's terror like a gourmet meal. "You think you can fight this? You think you're special?" The shadows behind the figure morphed, swirling dangerously, desperate to snatch them into their depths. "You are merely a pawn, and your little light will fade." "No!" Frank cried out, clutching tightly to Teresa's hand, struggling to keep the encroaching darkness at bay. He could feel the heat radiating from the light in his chest, but it felt fleeting, like clouds swallowing a sun. "Focus!" Jared urged, his voice wavering but resolute. "Think of everything you care about. Use that as your strength." The figure laughed, a chilling sound that echoed ominously. "Ah, the boy thinks he can conquer his fears with memories. How quaint." But Frank caught a glimpse of something else. He had friends, moments of laughter, and light that brought warmth to his soul. The fear that gripped him was real, but so was the love surrounding them. With a deep breath, he forced his mind to navigate through the chaos. He envisioned his father, his laughter ringing in his ears. Then, the wide, encompassing smiles of his friends. And finally, the recollections of nights spent chasing dreams with Teresa and Jared, dreams now threatened by the imminent darkness. Suddenly, the light within him surged, a vibrant pulse that expanded outward, brightening the cracked pavement of the alley. "I want to be a pawn," he vowed, locking eyes with the shadowy figure. "You don't control me." The oppressive darkness hissed in dismay, recoiling from the sudden burst of light like a beast repelled by fire. Frank pointed his hands forward, channeling all of that energy, every glowing emotion feeding into the brilliance erupting from his palms. "What is this?" the figure screeched, its voice fraying as its composure faltered. "You think a flicker can stop me?" But the light felt different now, stronger, fueled by the shared hope of those standing beside him. Frank glanced at Jared, who nodded, determination etched on his face, then at Teresa, whose unwavering gaze inspired him to push harder. They pressed forward, an unwavering wall of brightness standing resolute against the encroaching shadows. The figure's face twisted in rage, limbs thrashing wildly. "You will regret this insolence." Frank felt the ground tremble beneath them, an angry protest from the very earth, but they held their ground, hands intertwined, a beacon amidst the chaos. He could sense a fracture forming, both in the shadows and within the figure. "Make it end." Teresa's voice pierced through the roar of agonized whispers surrounding them. "Together!" Frank shouted, the word a rallying cry that gathered their collective strength, pushing back against the void. Suddenly, a direct explosion of light radiated outward, slicing through the shadows, illuminating the alley like a summer's dawn, but just as victory seemed within reach, the figure wailed, its form collapsing into a swirling mass that erupted into countless smaller shadows, retreating into dark corners but not vanishing entirely. This isn't over. With a last, desperate flourish, it dissipated, leaving chilling remnants swirling in the air, but Frank sensed the remnants were more dangerous than before, more vengeful. "Did we do it?" Jared panted, breathless. Frank shook his head, confusion sweeping over him like a cold wave. I don't know." Suddenly, a low rumble echoed from deep within the shadows that gathered at the edge of the alley. Lines of dark energy began to pulse erratically, sinister whispers swelling again. "What now?" Teresa's voice trembled, fear creeping back into her tone. Frank stepped back, sweat mingling with the chill of the encroaching darkness. "I don't know," he whispered, heart hammering. "But we have to keep moving. I can feel it, something worse is coming." With uncertainty gnawing at him, they turned at the sound of something heavy shifting, shadows coiling around their feet again. In the distance, echoes of laughter threaded through the creeping darkness, and the faint glimmer of the artifact beckoned. What lay ahead was a tumultuous journey that would challenge everything they thought they knew. Would the shadows unveil secrets they weren't meant to uncover? The air thickened with tension as Frank, Jared, and Teresa pressed onward, glancing nervously over their shoulders while shadows writhed at their feet. The laughter, a taunting echo, bounced off the alley walls like a sinister melody swirling around them. They edged forward, their hearts pounding, bracing for whatever might lurk just beyond the next corner. "Do you hear that?" Jared whispered, anxiety rippling through his voice. Teresa nodded, swallowing hard, eyes darting around. "It feels wrong," she added, the quiver in her words betraying her composure. They stepped cautiously, trying to avoid the dark tendrils that seemed to crawl hungrily, seeking to ensnare them again. Frank clenched his fists, determination bubbling up inside him. He had faced the shadows before. He could do it again. "Stay close," he urged, glancing around. "We need to stick together. Whatever those shadows become, we can't let them separate us." Suddenly, the alley widened into a clearing, illuminated by an eerie, dim light that flickered as if it were struggling to exist against an overpowering void. The artifact beckoned, shimmering uneasily at the center, surrounded by swirling remnants of darkness that trembled like leaves before a storm. "What if it's a trap?" Teresa questioned, her voice barely above a whisper. Frank took a step closer, heart racing, intuition sparking. "It's the reason we came here. We have to reach it." Jared hesitated. "What if it unleashes something worse?" "It has to be worth the risk," Frank replied, casting a resolute look at his friends. "Together, we can take it on. We've survived the darkness before." Before they could reconvene their strength, the shadows surrounding the artifact began to pulse, swirling rapidly, coiling into a massive shape that took form before them. The air hummed with energy, twisting their fears into solid, tangible shapes. Frank's stomach tightened as the figure took shape, a shadowy, multi-eyed creature, grotesque and mocking, gazing down at them. "Foolish children," it rasped, its voice a chilling amalgamation of whispers and shrieks. "You think you can touch the light without consequence? It belongs to me." "No!" Frank shouted, trying to conceal the tremor in his voice. "It belongs to us." With a flick of its translucent arm, the shadow creature sent a wave of dark energy crashing toward them. Frank barely had time to react, instinct kicking in as he grabbed Teresa and Jared, pulling them back just in time. They stumbled, narrowly avoiding the onslaught, heartbeats echoing in their ears. "We need to find a way to counter it," Frank yelled over the sound of splintering shadows. Teresa nudged closer to the artifact, the source of light flickering too fiercely now. "Maybe its energy can help us," she shouted back, desperation fueling her words, but before they could strategize, the creature lunged forward, its multiple eyes narrowing maliciously. "You cannot destroy me. I am the darkness and the shadows your fears made flesh." Panic struck Frank's heart like a dagger. He felt the echoes of terror rising in him. But he couldn't let it consume him. "Remember what we fought against," Frank urged his friends. "We have to visualize the light we have." He conjured images of hope in his mind, of laughter shared, love given freely. He could feel his resolve strengthening, the warmth igniting once more in his chest. "On three, let us do this together." 1. The creature paused, sensing their combined energy drawing strength. 2. Frank looked into Jared's eyes, hoping to see the courage reignited. He nodded back, hands trembling but determined. 3. Light erupted from within, illuminating the darkness. But the shadow creature roared, its dissonant wail striking terror deeper than ever. "Foolish mortals! You awaken a wrath beyond your comprehension." Suddenly, the ground beneath them began to quake, a startling tremor signaling the imminent disaster. The artifact flickered violently, illuminating the scene only to be swallowed by the darkness that swelled around it. In the chaos, Frank felt the shadows pushing against him, swirling like a tempest, threatening to engulf them. "Keep fighting," he shouted, pushing against the waves of fear, and yet, in that maelstrom, a chilling realization struck him. What if their strength wasn't enough? As the darkness clawed relentlessly, the spectral laugh echoed once more, mocking their efforts. The weight of despair settled heavy on his chest. And through the haze of shadow, he glimpsed a flicker of something more sinister lurking, waiting for the moment of total surrender. Frank. Look out! Jared shouted, pointing a figure emerging within the approaching shadows, its features obscured but exuding an aura as frightening as the creature itself. Who or what awaited them now? And did they even stand a chance of survival? The shadows pulsated, eager for the final clash. Frank's pulse quickened, a wild rhythm of fear and determination. Hovering before him was an overwhelming darkness from which cold tendrils spooled outward, beckoning despair. The shadow creature snarled, shifting like liquid smoke, and as it approached, it coalesced into an even more monstrous form, another entity, this one cloaked in the very essence of night. Who are you? Frank croaked, desperation lacing his voice. Your reckoning, child, the figure replied, its tone oily and thick, wrapping around him like chains. You've been foolish enough to foster hope, but it's time you learned your true place. No. Frank shouted, the word tearing from him like a lifeline. I refuse. I won't allow fear or darkness to own me. The light that had flickered inside him ignited into a blaze of defiance as he focused on the warmth of his friends beside him. Teresa's grip tightened on his arm and Jared stood resolute, breathing with focused resolve. With sheer willpower, he channeled the light, focusing on every moment that defined his humanity, the laughter shared with friends, the warmth of love, and the moments of unity that he cherished. Each memory summoned strength from within, pushing against the weight of the shadows that sought to suffocate him. Together. He roared, planting his feet firmly as he drew upon the shimmering energy of the artifact ahead. The moment crystallized, time seeming to suspend as Frank nodded at Jared and Teresa. The three of them lunged forward, pouring their combined essence into the light illuminating the alley. For everything we are. Frank called out, feeling radiant energy bursting from them as they cried in unison, we reject you. The power surged, racing towards the darkness that threatened to consume them. The shadow creature recoiled, its bravado shattering in the face of their unity. A beam of light, immaculate and raw, erupted from Frank's outstretched hands, slicing through the room like a beacon of hope. No. The entity howled, its form buckling under the onslaught. The shadows writhed maliciously, twisting and contorting as they felt the warmth of the light, desperate to break free from its grasp. Each shattered fragment of darkness disintegrated into wisps, fleeing from the brilliance that illuminated the crowded alley. Gasping, Frank felt the currents of energy shift as he pressed forward, pouring everything he had into the fight. Stay together. He shouted, urging his friends forward. They supported each other, their light combining into a radiating force, but, just as victory felt within reach, the dark figure screeched, unfurling into a chaotic whirlwind of shadow, a tornadic mass of spite and anguish. You think this is over? The true darkness lingers. You think you have triumphed? It lunged, desperation clawing at Frank's heart as he felt it brush against his skin, cold and threatening. But he couldn't give in now. With every ounce of strength, he shouted again, I won't be ruled by you. Frank concentrated, his heart racing as he felt the power of the artifact align with their determination. Light surged, doubling, tripling like the heartbeat of a sun igniting across the universe. Together, they culminated their strength and devotion into a radiant explosion that scattered the shadows like glitter in the sun. No! The figure yelled, shrieking as it dissolved before them, the cries echoing into the night until they faded into silence. For a heartbeat, there was nothing but stillness. The air cleared, the chaos receding like a nightmare once dawn has broken across the sky. Panting, Frank looked over at Teresa and Jared, who wore identical expressions of disbelief mingled with the glow of triumph. We did it, Jared whispered, catching his breath. Yeah, Teresa laughed, tears gleaming in her eyes, we really did. They shared a moment of pure joy radiating from the memory of a victory that felt monumental, hand in hand, hearts intertwined, but Frank knew this wasn't just an ending. A nagging whisper brushed against the fringes of his mind. This isn't finished, is it? No, Jared replied, brow furrowed. This isn't just the end of the shadows, we still have to face whatever else is out there. There's still more to uncover. Together, Teresa added, her gaze unwavering, whatever comes next, we can handle it. Frank nodded. The shadows had retreated but not vanished entirely. His heart raced, the pulse of adventure still thrumming under his skin. Destiny awaited them, unfurling a path ahead filled with discovery and purpose. He felt powerful, not because he carried light but because he carried love and friendship through every challenge. As they stepped out into the night, the world felt both ominous and beckoning. Frank turned, glancing back at the alley where they had faced both their biggest fears and their strongest selves. It was all there in his heart, a will carved from shadows, radiant and unyielding. Let us go, he said, determination sparking in his voice. The truth awaits us, and we're not done yet. With that, they left the remnants of darkness behind and stepped into a dawn filled with promise, ready to carve out their own destiny against whatever truths lay ahead. Now, as a reminder of the journey they shared, the real battle was only just beginning. You need to subscribe now to catch every twist of this tale. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button now so you feed the algorithm and keep the stories flowing. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild ending. What do you think will happen next? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Trust me, they'll thank you.